Conversations with Love with Eric Sean. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Love, where we interview real live people. They share their experience of how they've overcome adversities and how they use those experiences to spread love. You know, the first thing I want to say, that the good thing about this is that we are sharing a unique moment in each other's history, because this is my first time doing this. And I'm pretty sure it's your first time doing it. So this is something that we share together. So we are growing together.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah. This is officially my first episode of Conversations with Love, the video blog or vodcast, or, whatever they're calling it nowadays. The whole point of the show is I just want to find people who have overcome adversities, and they haven't let that so much anger them. What they've done is they've grown through that and allowed that unique experience to empower them to empower other people and to help raise the vibration of love in the world. And, when you first talked to me about doing something like this, I was excited because, I see you on a regular basis, and I know your heart. I know the type of man that you are. And I know that at your core, you want to use your experience to help other people maneuver through the same type of experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I live for, man. Without speaking too much into it yet, it's just one of those things where I found out that, to me, just because of the unique background that we share in a way, it's like that was my purpose. You know what I mean? Like it's for that, to express that experience, to help strengthen others that may not be as strong at a certain time period in their life.
So you're saying that you think that the whole point of the experience is to empower, to put you in a position to be able to help other people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And as well as heal myself. So it's not only just about, me just giving back, but as I communicate and I talk with others as well, and hearing other stories and things like that, it helps me heal. Like, because I won't say that I'm completely 100% healed. We all deal with certain issues in life that may be from a nurturing situation, kind of growing up, or from experience, or just everything, things that we all have been through. So, and as I feel like I'm growing and evolving a bit, it really helps with me just sharing my story and then hearing other stories as well. Because it really helps me just look at life with a different set of lens. And I feel like the universe kind of brings us all together to help fix us and help us heal, everybody heal.
Yeah, and you say you're not completely healed. And honestly, I don't know if anybody ever becomes completely healed. It's like, I heard the analogy years ago about peeling back the onion. One layer at a time, the healing process happens. And I think that we eventually get to a point where that experience doesn't keep us up at night. It doesn't control our every movement. I think we get to a point where we can look back at it and we've grown enough to do exactly what we're doing now, which is sharing that experience, giving it meaning, giving it air, giving it purpose. I was thinking earlier today that if you have any experience that you go through, especially if you've always considered it a bad experience, if you want to make it a good experience, share it with somebody. Use it to help somebody else, right? Yeah. So that automatically makes it a beneficial and a good experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And speaking about experience, I want to hear a little bit about your story.
Sweet. All right, so here we go. So like we kind of discussed a little bit, I just say right now I'm 32, official birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I'll say things just start changing when I turned 27. I had relocated. I was living in Nashville, finally kind of got settled down in Nashville. Thought life really was panning out. We started expanding, family started growing a bit. We had 2 daughters at the time. Our baby girl might have been like 6 months. Then we ended up, surprisingly, got a newborn on the way. So we had our 3rd daughter. And like I say, we're settled, and I'm really thinking Nashville is about to be home here. I get a call from my older brother, I get a call from my sister, I should say. She told me my father had a stroke. I I immediately caught a flight back home that following day. Seen my dad. I hadn't seen him in a few years just because I was in Nashville and because of the relationship we had. So one of the things I wanted to ask him is something that it was mentioned just years back. A buddy of mine, he had called me one day and said, hey, what's this? I hear about you being adopted. And I'm like, adopted? Like, what you mean? Like, you kind of calling me out the blue with this. You my friend. Like, what you mean I'm adopted? He like, you got a brother? He said my brother name and asked me, does he work at a hospital? I said, yeah. And he said, oh, well, we were having a conversation and I guess things ain't turned out right. But he said, well, he adopted, right? That's why the family, we don't fool with him. And it just caught me at all. So just speeding up to that story where I seen my dad, when I flew back in after he had that stroke, I asked my father and he was kind of still had to stutter in a little bit. He was just a bit off balance because he just had a stroke and everything. But I asked him, I said, hey, Daddy, what's this about me being adopted? And he like, well, so what if you is adopted, you still my son. And I'm like, what? Like, and by him saying that, I knew he's coming from a good place. Him saying like, the fact that you being adopted doesn't mean that I don't love you, like you're not my own son. He never showed any signs. I didn't know this for 27 years, so I didn't hold any harsh feelings towards him for that. But obviously, as a man, like, yeah, it's kind of hurtful. You hear something like that. Immediately, I hadn't seen my brother in years either. So I ended up calling him up, put him to the side and say, I want to have a conversation with you. The minute we seen face to face, he was like, hey, I already know what you want to talk about. Want to talk about what I told your friend a few years ago? I did say what he said, you know what I mean? But he said at the time I was in my feelings, so it kind of came off harsh. He like, but I didn't know that you didn't know that you was adopted. And then he went through the whole spiel of how I got adopted and when. And that's when I found out I was adopted at 2 months. And at that point, I asked my mom about it, and my mom kind of denied it a little bit just because of her own issues she may have had with it as a parent, maybe afraid or something that she may lose her son. I don't know. But for the most part, she denied it. I ended up going back home to Nashville with my wife and my 3 daughters. Had to face them, let them know the story, what I found out while I was going on top of my dad having that stroke. So just had a little bit of tension on me from that point. And at that point, I just had to figure out who I really was, from a standpoint of where I came from, what was running through my blood, who my real mom was. Like, do I have a real name? Like, what is this life in a way? Because in a sense, it felt like life really wasn't real at that point. Excuse me. So I end up, I applied for my non-identifying information for the state of Ohio, even though I was living in Nashville, and they sent me my non-identifying information, and it had everything was identical as my original birth certificate. So it was, from my old name, it said Terry Doty. That's what I was going by my whole life for 27 years. Terry was my name. So I get this new birth certificate, and I see same date, same, time, place where I was born at. And then it said, Cameron Smith. And I'm like, man, what the heck? Like, then it said a different mom name. I'm like, oh shit, this is really getting out of control here. It felt like a Lifetime movie, honestly, going through it. That's when it really hit me like, yes, man, like you really are adopted. Like, and I'm like, oh shit. So now I have to find out, who's my mom? Like, is she still alive? So I was born in 1989. So this is, for me, my mindset is going back like, this is like, the crack baby eras and stuff like that. I don't even know if my mom is going to be alive. Like, I don't know what type of information I'm about to find out. I don't know any of this. But it was one thing that I always did, along my journey. I just, I always prayed and I said that I understand what I'm about to open up right now, and I said that honestly, I'm ready for whatever's going to come out of it, whether it be a good experience, bad experience, whatever it is, I'm truly open for it. And I know I got to be ready for the very worst, if that's the case, that what it's going to be. So fast forward, I end up finding my mom, reached out to her. She said, I asked her, I said, you know who my dad is? No disrespect. I didn't see a name on the birth certificate. So she said, yeah, you can Google him. And say he's a stand-up comedian. So I Googled him, and as soon as I Googled him, I'm like, yeah, that's my dad. It was a split image, just right off the back. Like I look identical to him, you know, and reached out to my dad and we rekindled, you know, had a good bond. We talked on the phone the very first time for about 8 hours. And I got a unique sickle cell trait. It's hemoglobin trait C. And before I got off the phone with my dad, he said, hey, man, before we get off the phone, he said, hey, do you got a sickle cell trait? And I'm like, yeah. He like, you got it from me. Like, and it's just one of those things, again, not knowing nothing. Like, I didn't even have anybody to look like me, obviously, growing up. But I never questioned it because the love felt so genuine coming from my mom and my dad.
How did you if you can remember back when you first went and got the identifying information, before you opened it, before you really indulged into it, do you remember like how you felt or what was going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say that I couldn't sleep. I was working third shift. It was like a split shift from 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. So I couldn't sleep at all throughout the day because I was waiting on a mailman every day. And I was constantly, you know, checking the mail, looking for it, trying to get this paper to figure out who I am, if I had a different name or whatever the case may be, what kind of information I could get to find out, like, who my parents are, like where did I come from? What's the story of at that point? What's the story of Cameron Smith? Like, who is this guy? So when I got the non-identifying information, it was like I didn't hesitate at all to open it. Like I was really excited. I couldn't wait to get this journey on the road. Once I found everything out, it was definitely definitely a big weight off my back, and like mainly. And it wasn't more so of me being afraid or scared or anything like that they may turn me away or anything, because my mindset going into it was, I'm not looking for a mom. I'm not looking for a dad. Like I have a set of parents already. Like I was, you know, fortunate enough that I was placed in a good home and I was raised up okay for what I know of and to find out what my biological mom wanted me to be raised up in. So it was like I wasn't out yearning for parents. I was just looking for my identity. Anything else was a bonus for me. I didn't hold any grudges against anyone because even though like I was 27, I still knew that, man, when I was 19, I did things that I may have regretted also. So I'm a different person from 19 than I am 27. So I can't look at my mom or my dad and say, oh, well, I'm upset with them because they may have gave me up or anything like that. But I was really excited, though, just to answer the question.
Yeah, you know, and our experience is a little bit different when it comes to that because, you know, I went right from being born into foster care, and you know, you mentioned the main thing you wanted to find out was who you were and where you came from and what blood you had running through you, and you know that was like a question for me all of my life, you know, because I obviously any of the foster homes, I knew I was in foster homes, so I knew that wasn't my family. And when I was 9, I was adopted, and my new father, we didn't even look alike, so I knew that he wasn't my father. And then one day somebody told me that you can get the non-identifying information, you know, so I went through whatever steps I had to get, and I got it. And you know, it was years before you probably did it, and things were probably a little bit different, but everything was blacked out except for my mom's name. And there was one address that was a common address, and it turned out after I started doing research to be my grandmother's address. But you know, and I showed up at her house one day. I just went there and I waited. I think I got there at like 2:00. She didn't get off work till 6. I sat in this alley for 6 hours waiting for her to get there. And but it was weird because the moment that, and I had done research, so I knew who she was. The moment that I talked to her, it was weird because it was like I automatically knew that there was a connection.
Yeah.
And that was the main thing I was looking for, because, you know, by the time that I went through that, I was like 20, 25 maybe. You know, I was a grown man, but it was just something about knowing the truth about who you were. There was something very healing in just that aspect of it.
Yeah. I got to ask you something. So on to, like you said, that connection you knew. So this is when I met my mom. So my mom and I, we talked this is my biological mom. We talked almost every day. Once I finally got a hold of her, we talked every day, 5 a.m. till about 7 a.m. Because I told you I was working. I was getting off at 3 a.m. in the morning. So I would stay up and I would call her right when she gets up, getting ready to work. And we would talk every day on her way to work. And we talked for, let's see, about 3.5, 4 months before we met for the first time. I was living in Nashville and she was in Maryland. So we ended up meeting back home in Cleveland. And I remember the first time like really hugging her. Like, and it was like, it's a feeling I can't really explain, but it was like when I hugged her, I felt like a kid. Like you say, that sense of connection when it's like, you don't know this woman from a can of paint, but you feel like you know her. Like, it's like, this is where I came from. I didn't feel like I had to have a guard up or anything. It was just like, and granted, I understand everyone's situations could be different, but it's a situation where I feel like this is really where I came from. Like, you just know.
Yep. And it was, you mentioned that it wasn't like you were looking for parents, but I think that the little child that's inside of you and inside of me, once that connection was made, regardless of who your mom was at the time when you met her, regardless of who my grandmother was or who my father was by the time I met him, there was something that little child inside of me needed some closure. And so that hug that you had with your mom and the hug that I had with my grandmother, there was closure in it. It was almost like the answer to so many questions, even if nothing was even spoken. It was just that connection and that closure. So I get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you met your mom. You reconnected with your family.
Yes. So I met my mom. My mom, she stayed in Maryland, and actually that's where like most of our family actually resonate is Maryland. So my dad, I have a lot of family members that live here in Cleveland, but my dad actually lives in Las Vegas.
Okay.
So it was a while before I seen my father. It might have been 7-8 months or so. He was a stand-up comedian on a Carnival Cruise Line. So the whole time he was in and out of the States with that, but I constantly stayed on the phone with him. Like our very first conversation we had, he said, like I said, we had stayed on the phone for 8 hours. My dad, he told me, call him Pop. He say, I talk to my kids every single day. Like, and you my son, so I look forward to talking to you every day. And he's been standing on that for almost 4 years now. Yeah. So for the most part, I talk to him every day. Even when he was on the ship, he'll call me and shoot me a text, just something. And I've never had a male role model in my life and I'm a grown man. So like I say, 27. So it was something that we touched on it before. It's something that when you used to not having something, sometimes you take for granted that the things is right in front of you. Right. Because you feel like, well, I never had family anyway, or I never had this. I had to grow up on my own anyway, from a man's perspective, And just from my dad, from a loving place, from a man, I can say he definitely helped fill that void in, and just naturally, just being who he is.
Yeah, it's all part of healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, where are you at with the whole experience today?
All right. So where I'm at now is I had to recreate who I would say I am. So obviously, Cameron Smith, and I changed my name in 2018. So I said, you know what? I was going through some things as far as with my adopted mom, dealing with her feelings, and we weren't seeing eye to eye. Pretty much, I only had her and my sister from her anyway, her daughter, and we kind of all were butting heads a bit and couldn't communicate right. And I was really reaching out. I was really depressed at the time. I found out my daughter had autism during the same time frame. When I found out that I was adopted, found out my dad had the stroke. Like, all this was back to back, which is nonstop. Then I get the news that, I was sensing something might have been wrong with my daughter. She wasn't walking right away. words slowed down and things. And then we found out she had autism. And I was overweight at the time. So as I grew and I got closer to my biological family, I seen everyone. So I seen a lot of people. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed within the first 6 months of me meeting my father. So I ended up going to his funeral, and I seen my dad's side of the family. And I seen that everyone wasn't overweight, wasn't obese or anything like that. Same thing with my mom. I see my mom's side of the family, and no one looks, oddly out of shape or anything like that. So I'm like, shit, I've been big for 17 years, and it's not genetic. And I blamed it on genetics this whole time. So I said, oh, shit, this has to change. So that was the number one thing that I devoted myself to, was the gym. I said, you know what? Every single day I was working 12 hours. I would get up, I had to work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I would wake up at 3 a.m., be at the gym at 3:30, 4, work out until about 5:30 and head to work. Every single day, this was my routine. And I just knew that I'm going to change it. So, and this is when I start crafting who Cameron Smith is. So I opened my mind up more, start reading a lot more. Again, like I say, from working out, obviously getting closer to both sides of the family, understanding what's really running in my genes, and honestly why I think and kind of move the way I do. Like, and it's weird. It's a weird thing that, like, my great grandfather, he worked on like airplanes and things like that. My grandfather, my mom's dad, he built engines and stuff like that for all his kids. He naturally is gifted with his hands. I didn't know these people, like I say, from a can of paint, 27 years old, I'm a maintenance technician. I've been working on cars since I was 8 years old. I've been tinkering with stuff ever since, like I say, a little boy. So to understand that a lot of things that I really had that was naturally in me was kind of gifted through, I would call it just the universe. Mm-hmm. Things that just came down the bloodline. Yep. So it made me just, like I say, create my own reality, even though it may have seemed like it was hell at the time. And even though we go through our ups and downs, it was like, you know what? It looks like you got dealt a shitty deal of cards here, but you got to make the best and create your own reality. So I said, all right, Terry Doty is done. That guy was fat for 27 years. So we're putting him away. Here's Cameron Smith. I'm going to get myself in shape. I'm going to be open-minded. I want to share, and I want to give a lot of love and a lot of peace out to people in general. I genuinely care for people, since it's the reason why I even left being a maintenance technician, a career that I was in for 12 years. They jumped right into personal training. It was like, you know what? I did a transformation. I can show somebody else how to get there. And I genuinely really care. Like, it's not about just a money situation, because I could have stayed as a maintenance tech and, made plenty good money in that field.
So a couple things. Number one, do you feel that the adoption, figuring out that you were adopted and meeting your family and discovering more of who you were, kind of motivated you to get on this quest to lose weight?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
So something that at the period of time when you first found out you thought was a terrible situation,
yeah, ultimately
turned into something of purpose to help give you purpose and direction.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that just about changing your name. I was born Eric Sean Jackson. That was my birth name. And, I grew up, and most of my life I had issues with the fact that my mom wasn't around. Okay. When I was adopted, my adopted name became Eric James Price. Okay. And, my father, I always had issues with him from day one. I mean, the most loving, altruistic man in the world, but I had so much emotional stuff going on. Yeah. We just didn't connect at all. Plus I couldn't relate to him. I came from the ghetto. He was a white man, God. He was a homosexual white man. So it was just completely different than anything that I had ever experienced at all. And by the time I was 9, I had feelings, and I kind of had beliefs, you know what I mean? Yeah. So one day it occurred to me that, and the reason I'm going through this is because I think that you just said the same thing. It occurred to me that in order for me to discover who I was as a grown person and to claim my own life, I could not be my mother's son. because there was issues with that my whole life, and I was a victim of my circumstances. So to release that, I couldn't be my mom's son. So Jackson, I had to just abolish that.
Yeah.
I had issues with my father and Price, and I had to abolish that. And that's where Eric Sean came from. Eric Sean, one day I was at church and I went into this, it was weird. I had this like moment of meditation and visualization, and I saw myself as a little child running through a field, and for some reason I was up above, and I told this child, "You're safe now, I got you." Mm-hmm. And it all just came to me that I had to be my own person. I had to decide who I was. I had to take responsibility for my actions. It was no longer okay for me to be a victim of the circumstances that my mom unfortunately went through that put me in my circumstances. I couldn't be my dad's son, and I had to be myself. And you just made me think about that, because you were talking about how you had to for a lack of better words, reinvent who you were.
Absolutely.
So why personal training?
This easy one here. I say personal training because it's I remember at one point where I was at. And like I said, being a big guy for 17 years, and we both know this now, that the key to losing weight or any kind of weight loss, bodybuilding, any kind of transformation in general with the body is going to be consistency. If you can stay consistent on something long enough and really grind it out, soon you'll have your result. And for me, it was like I tried so many different things. Like I can say Atkins diet, keto, P90, anything you think of is like I done tried it, starvation, fasting. I tried all type of stuff, but my thing was I wasn't consistent. And the moment I hit a wall, I would just, oh man, I'm just big because it's genetics or whatnot. And I remember I hired a personal trainer, and this guy, even to this day, like I still look up to this guy. He's like a year older than me. And he was the one that I hired him as a personal trainer when I was in Nashville. This is right before I found out about the adoption stuff and my daughter and everything. I hired this guy, he took me on for 2 months, and he really got to me just with his words. He had a lot of passion, and he really wanted to pour that into people. I can tell that he genuinely really cared about people. He had love there. Mm-hmm. And still to this day, he's still the same guy. And I can say that by going through that and seeing how much passion he had to want to change somebody, and knowing that he's always been a smaller guy from what he was telling me, just an athletic background, I knew that, once I got in shape, that I was going to give back to as many people as I can. So, right, it's easy for me, like I say, just being gifted with my hands alone, with just being able to mechanically fix something or troubleshoot anything or something like that. But I find that the power is more so in my brain, because I can troubleshoot. I have the confidence to say that I can troubleshoot anything. It's not about just troubleshooting a machine. If I can fix a machine, why can't I help fix a person? All it is just breaking them down and troubleshooting that person and trying to figure out what's the block that they're not releasing, and help them get and stay consistent to get to their journey. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of passion in what I do. Like, it's like, I'm not going to give up. I want to give you a real personal experience, not just look at my phone and tell you to count to 10 on jumping jacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's, and I have the pleasure of watching you train a lot, and you can tell that there's passion behind it. You can tell that it's not about the money, and that you're driven to do it. Like, you operate from purpose.
Absolutely.
And I respect that, because sad to say that most people do things because of the money. Somebody once told me that if you chase money, money will run. If you chase passion, money will follow. Gotcha. So, I think we're in the same boat. We're blessed to be able to do the things that we love to do and operate from passion, and money will always follow.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. I love it.
You mentioned that, when you thought about it, all the mechanical stuff that you do, it runs in your family. Yeah. I had the pleasure of finally finding my dad a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. And that side of my family, I've been a life coach and a motivational speaker for probably, the last 10, 15 years. Okay. But I look up my uncle was an imam. Okay. My one sister is a motivational speaker and a life coach.
Wow.
One of my brothers is a motivational speaker. But again, it runs in the family. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And all the stuff that I've been doing, it's just in my blood. It's just in
Yeah.
my blood.
Yeah.
So there's some things, whether we know people in our family or not, we can't escape it. It's genetic engineering.
Right.
You know,
That's one. It is definitely in the bloodline. You figure. Besides me, weight thing.
It was a good excuse though for a long time, wasn't it?
Right, it worked, didn't it?
So you were talking about your daughter. Her words started slowing.
Yeah. So yeah, things really got hard, man. So her words started slowing, and obviously this is your kid. You know, it's something like and I try to make it simple for people, where to say that if you have a child and your child has a fever, and you know that this fever will pass, but there's nothing that you can do in the time frame that you're in right now, but let your child kind of weather the storm. Mm-hmm. And it hurts as a parent to sit there and see your child sick. So this is some of the stuff that we were just going through it with my daughter. Her words were kind of slowing. I noticed that she wasn't walking. So I kind of just questioned the doctor one day, said, hey, like I kind of read into something. I don't know what it is really, but you think she may have autism? And the doctor was like, no, like she's a lovable kid. Like she shows affectionate. She hug you guys, kiss and everything like that. Her words is just behind right now. All right, fine. So, you know, a couple months go by, we start getting her hearing checked out, and we're going through all these tests. And this is where it, you know, things is really tough, you know, and I don't share this story much, but I'm gonna share it with you. I remember that again, like it's like I had to get a hearing check done on her, and I knew that it was mainly I know she would sing her songs, she would watch Disney or whatnot, sing and dance her songs. So I knew that it wasn't her hearing. And my wife took finding out that she could possibly have autism. She was taking it really bad. She was just really in denial about it. And fully still just really, she wasn't really sure what autism was, but she just was like, no, you know, like any mother, you know, there's nothing wrong with my child. So, you know, I had to take my daughter to go get a hearing check done on her. And it's a kid, he's 5 years old, he's spazzing out, and you know, you would think he's just acting out of control, not knowing anything about autism. And seeing that, I'm like, you know, what's wrong with this kid? You know, and his mom just couldn't really calm him down. She couldn't soothe him. So we end up going in the back. We got a hearing check done on her, and I got my daughter on my lap. And the lady is calling her name while we're in this sound booth from one side of the sound booth, and my daughter wasn't turning and looking. So this is where, like, kind of like one of those things where you got to kind of face the mirror and you got to like just really admit like, yeah, this is probably it. Like something's definitely wrong here. And again, it's my own kid. So I'm like, you know what, damn, something's really wrong with my child. So she see the lights go off, she turned and she looked, and they passed her and said that, hey, you know, she's good. Her hearing is fine. Even though I knew her hearing was really fine, but it was mainly knowing the fact that she wasn't being acknowledgeable from her name. Either from me or my wife, we could call her name and she wouldn't come at all. So you're talking about, you know, your almost 2-year-old kid, and she's crawling and trying to walk along stuff and play, and she's not responding to you. And you're not used to that because we already had a child who was 7 years old at the time. So we kind of know that, hey, you should be listening now. You should get what's going on. So obviously autism was new for us. We went through a stage with her where she had sensory issues. She would wake up, and this is peak of me going through a little bit of my depression with the adoption. I moved back home to Cleveland from Nashville after finding the news with my daughter and saying that she may have autism. I'm like, all right, well, I need more family around that could potentially help. And I could, you know, kill two birds with one stone. I got my family in Maryland. I can drive 4 or 5 hours to get to Maryland. I got my adopted family that's here, my mom and my sister that was going to help out. They were helping out before when we were here before with our oldest daughter. So I'm thinking, you know, it's going to be great coming back home. I felt closer to my adopted parents and my sister more so than I did before because I didn't know anything for 27 years. So it really made me look at them in a brighter light to say, you really treated me like your own for 27 years. You didn't hide anything. You didn't treat me funny. Didn't outcast me, anything like that. So I was put with you for a reason. Like the universe brought us all together for a reason, and you wanted me. So I really care for you more now for the sense of that. It's not that I'm just a label and I'm just your child or whatnot. So we come home and I'm just getting to it. Situation ended up going bad for my adopted family. Like I said, we were butting heads. We were at the peak of it with my daughter with the autism. She started having sensory issues with her bowels. 2 a.m, she's waking up. She's smearing, hate to say it, she's smearing crap all over the wall and stuff. And she can't control it. She's crying. She don't know what's going on. Not liking the feeling the way how her bowels is coming out or whatnot. And my wife would literally, her and I would sit in the bathroom and just cry. And I had to be at work at 6 a.m. So it was just tough times with going through that, along with obviously the family issues, along with really finding out or really getting to know my biological family, because this is still new. You really don't know these people. So you have to trust that everything is going to be okay. And your mindset has to be okay. At least me, I'm thinking my mindset has to be pure and okay as I'm talking to my biological family, because they could easily push back.
Right.
And if I really wanted that, they can say, man, this guy, I don't know what the heck is wrong with this dude. You know what I mean? Like, he got his own stuff going on here. Really not knowing who they were at the time, So it was a lot of stress, man. Like, she's in a lot better state now. As far as my daughter, health-wise, she's definitely getting there. She's starting to talk a lot more. We got her in a lot of therapies, ABA therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. The school is working a lot with her. Even through the midst of COVID, the school system is really working with her. She's still going to school right now, even though the other students aren't.
Yeah, that I can imagine that would be hard to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely.
On a daily basis, and would require a lot of patience and tolerance and love and understanding.
Yeah.
What message would you give to new parents who are just entering and beginning that journey with an autistic kid?
Honestly, it's really going to take a lot of experiences. Every child is different. They have over 2,000 different characteristics that brings up the spectrum of autism. So it's one of those things where every child isn't the same. Some is more severe, some is less. But my biggest thing that I would say to the parents out there is mainly just always keep an open mind. Always keep your communication open with your spouse. The statistic says that more than 80% of marriages end in divorce with a child that has autism. So really try to hold on to each other throughout the midst of everything. It's a real tough world looking at it, because if you're not in it and you don't totally understand it, only one parent can really work. So it's hard to get someone to watch and babysit your child if they don't know much about it either, let alone babysit regular kids. And you as parents being able to trust someone else watching your child and loving and caring for your child like you would. So at times, most of the family households, the dad will go out and work and the mother stay home and try to take care of the kids and things like that. It can get stressful for the wives out there, the moms out there, because you're dealing with this 24 hours and the dad isn't dealing with it as much. But yet some of the moms out there aren't dealing with the workforce and dealing with what I would call the real reality. So the dad is out fighting in the real world, in the real reality, and the mom is back home fighting their own reality. So you guys have to really hold on to that and know that you guys have each other. And you just got to stick through it, and it'll get better.
Yeah, I would imagine that it's kind of one of those situations where slowly but surely, because your world does change, you get used to it because it just becomes the norm. And, and the mental, physical, and emotional resources that you need, you always find a way for them to be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I commend you, and I know that it's not a situation that is an ideal situation, or it's not a situation that you asked for, but you take responsibility for it and you do what you need to do.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you for that. Thank you.
If you had to give the world a message of who Cam was, who would you say that you are at your core?
At my core, I say at my core, just starting off with I'm very humble, very humble, and I really try to stand behind like that ego. I want everyone to be comfortable around me. There's no such thing, in my opinion, as an embarrassment. We all have experiences. In my opinion, there's no such thing as good or bad. The experience is, no matter what the event is, the experience is life. And I'm just part of the experience.
Now, if I had to describe to the world who I thought Cam was, I would say, first off, that I think that Cam is a very humble individual who would go out of his way to make sure that any individual that came in contact with them felt comfortable in their own skin. I would say that Cam is an individual who takes responsibility for his life, and he's always trying to dig deeper to understand himself a little bit more, to always be in control of his emotions, very transparent, and is always seeking more knowledge. And once again, I commend you for that, because I think that what the world needs to see is younger generations, and by saying that, I have to admit that I'm an old man, which, that ain't coming. but to see younger generations, the young people, take responsibility for their lives. And it's so easy to let life's experiences sour you and to become angry. So It's a pleasure to see you every day when I see you, because what I automatically assume is that when you show up at work, you've already done something to take responsibility for your destiny. Whether it's get up and go to the gym, whether you listen to something, whether you read something, but before you make it to the gym, I know that you've done something in some way, shape, or form to understand Cam and to present the highest and best version of Cam to the world.
Absolutely.
And I respect that, and I absolutely respect that in you and in any individual.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I wanted to do this with you and in general is because I think that nowadays it's so easy to get frustrated at life. It's so easy to take everything personal. It's so easy to stay in a state of being angry.
Yeah.
It takes a lot more to take responsibility, to find the good in everything, to want to elevate yourself, to discover who you are, and to use everything that you've gone through and turn into a good experience by allowing that experience, that unique experience, to help somebody else become okay with themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's well said. I love that.
And you're one of the people that I can say that totally embodies that. And so, again, that's why the first episode of this that I wanted to do was with you, because again, it's so easy to blame everybody else, and it takes a lot more courage and strength to take responsibility, to dig down into the root causes, and to come out a stronger, better person and realize that your true job here, because everybody always says, well, I want to know what my purpose is. Well, your purpose is to be an instrument and a vehicle of love, to be able to give love and receive love. Now, you have unique abilities to where you can utilize to have that experience, like you, it's personal training, but there's love wrapped all around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I would imagine that personal training is not the end of the road, but it's only a beginning of something great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm definitely with you, man. I'm honored for you to at least let me be part of this, let alone be your first show, Yeah. I just knew, right off the bat, I really can say that I'm grateful for just having you. You know what I mean? I learned so much in just this short time, from just the experiences, the small talks, everything. You know, I don't take anything for granted.
And I don't either. And somebody once told me that I can't exist without you. See, we always think that a lot of times we're so special, but we can't exist without other people. My experiences can't have purpose unless I have somebody who can benefit from that experience.
Absolutely.
I can't decide who I am unless I have the contrast of who you are.
Right.
And that's why we're all connected, and we all need each other. And I really appreciate sharing this experience with you, because this time will never exist again. You know, it will never be 5 o'clock on your birthday with the exact same circumstances that occurred today, with the exact same energy, with us doing this podcast. Those circumstances will never exist again. So this is history for both of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In closing, what do you want to tell people?
In closing, I like to say, no matter what you guys are going through, just understand that you guys are in control. All in all, you have to understand and be aware of your surroundings. You have to understand and be aware of your environment, who you are down to the core, you know, and not let anyone else put something on you. You know, don't let anyone else label you. Whether it be a weight loss journey, whether it be your child you're going through, understand that there's always going to be light at the end of the tunnel. It may seem like you've been in a storm for a while, but just keep fighting and keep moving forward. It's going to strengthen you, and there's always good in the sense of what you're going through. There's one thing I always say is, I got it from Jim Carrey, but one of my favorite lines, you know, is the future doesn't exist. It's only the present. You work on the present for the future to exist. So it's always the present. You always live in the present. And, you know, you have to understand that and just live within that present and live within your own reality. Just because something doesn't make sense to someone else, it doesn't matter. It's your own reality. So you have to keep fighting.
Well said. Well said. Thank you for being my first guest.
Absolutely.
Thank you for allowing me to share this time with you. And I know that I'll do many more of these, and I'm sure that you'll do many more of these, because I'm going to stay on you to make sure that you do, because you have a lot to say. Your voice needs to be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate you, like I say, from everything, because this is ultimately what I wanted to do. I'll just share one more thing before we get off here.
Sure.
I always wanted to be a motivational speaker. And it started with me being a maintenance tech. And this is before, I have plenty of stuff written out. This is before me finding out about the adoption. I was 23, 24 when I started to want to kind of go into this. I noticed that every company I worked for, I was always the youngest and the only Black maintenance guy in the department. And I always thought that even when contractors came in, it's like, there's a bunch of white guys around me, you know, and in a sense of where I've coming from an inner city where you go to school and the whole school is Black. So it's like, well, where is the people that look like me in this industry? Mm-hmm. I see people out on the production lines. So if I'm getting paid X amount of dollars to do what I do as a maintenance tech, and I'm not nearly working as hard as these guys on the production line, and it's almost a $10 difference in what we make, or $15, $20 difference in what we make, what makes me different? So I always wanted to give back, and I wanted to share to like schools. It could be detention homes, jails, nursing homes, churches, anything like that. And with just sharing knowledge of trades in general. That's where it started from. Just wanted to share information on trades, like really invest in yourself and invest in some kind of skill for yourself that you would never have to go out and ask someone for $1. People will come to you and they'll pay for your services. Not to have to go and have to beg for a job or anything like that, or go to work and be afraid to work. When it's like, no, like people will come to you and they'll make sure you're fed for the rest of your life if you hold on to skill sets and some kind of morals.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. All right, Mr. Cam, I'm glad that you reinvented yourself, and I got a chance to meet you, and I look forward to many days of being in the gym training with you.
Absolutely.
And the one-on-ones that we have, I find them very beneficial.
Yes, sir. Likewise. And I
hope that you enjoy the rest of your birthday.
Oh yeah, I got a massage coming up.
Yeah, man. It's ain't nothing like a good massage, man. You gotta, there ain't nothing wrong with pampering yourself.
Absolutely. I'm finding all that out now, man. I can't wait till we touch more on it, on what happened today for our one-on-ones.
Yeah.
I finally did that float session. I got to tell you all about it. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, because I've been wondering if it was any good. Melissa told me about it, so I wanna see. But it was good.
Oh yeah, it was real good.
Yeah.
I got a unique story for you.
We'll talk about it.
Yes, sir.
Right. Enjoy the rest of your birthday, man.
I appreciate you again, E. Thanks.
All right, man.
Yes, sir.
Conversations with Love with Eric Sean.